Today, we reveal the true story that inspired one of the scariest movies of all time, The Exorcist. A tale so terrifying, it's said to have haunted the lives of everyone involved. It's 1949, Maryland, USA. A quiet, seemingly ordinary town hides a dark secret. Here lives 14-year-old Robbie, a boy with a curious and troubled mind, under the care of his Aunt Harriet. Robbie's Aunt Harriet isn't your average aunt. She's a professor of paranormal studies and an expert on dark rituals. People come to her for help to speak to loved ones who have passed away. Robbie, an orphan, has always wanted a chance to speak to his parents again. He begged his Aunt Harriet to help him, desperate to hear their voices one last time. One evening, after much insistence, Harriet finally gave Robbie an Ouija board, a tool she said could connect him to spirits from the beyond. She warned him to use it cautiously. Robbie was overjoyed. He started using the Ouija board every day, trying to reach his parents. But instead of hearing their voices, he began experiencing strange occurrences around the house. Soon, Robbie's behavior began to change. He became easily annoyed and started to lose his patience. Strange sounds began haunting him, whispers in the night, soft knocks on his bedroom walls, footsteps that led nowhere. And then tragedy struck. His beloved Aunt Harriet passed away unexpectedly. Grieving, Robbie clung to the Ouija board, hoping to speak to her again. After Harriet's passing, Robbie's connection to the Ouija board deepened. He spent hours each night calling to her, seeking comfort from the only family he had left. After that, weird things began to occur. He suddenly had scratches on his skin. He heard his aunt's voice calling him, and sometimes it seemed like she was crying or laughing creepily. Harriet's family noticed strange changes in him. He started glaring at them angrily. One day, an older family member saw that Robbie's hands were cut and wounded, and everyone was frightened to see him like that. One night, scary things began to happen when Robbie was alone in the house, using an Ouija board to contact his aunt. The doors and windows started shaking in a pattern of 3, stopping and starting. Robbie felt strange, and then suddenly, 2 shadowy figures appeared, moving quickly around his room. The lights began to blink on and off rapidly, and Robbie became very scared. Terrified, Robbie ran to his aunt's room. He thought he saw her sitting on the bed, playing with her hair. But when she looked up and moved her hair, he realized it wasn't his aunt. The figure had empty white eyes and a decayed, scary face. Robbie got scared because it wasn't his aunt. It was someone else with a very scary face, and worms were coming out of it. The figure stared at Robbie and laughed loudly. Robbie wanted to run away, but then he saw a demon with long teeth and red eyes standing in front of the door. Robbie froze in fear. Suddenly, the door shut by itself. Later that night, Harriet's family came home and found Robbie standing there with blood all over his body, holding a knife in one hand and a dead cat in the other. He was cutting and eating the cat's flesh. The moment he saw the other members of the family, he got angry and wild and shouted with terrifying sound, and in few seconds, he got fainted. After the incident, Robbie's condition worsened, and his family decided to call a psychiatrist for help. However, they couldn't understand what was happening. Frightened, they then called priests for assistance. When the priests arrived, Robbie's behavior became violent, and he began shouting wildly. They tied him to the bed, but he only laughed louder and started cursing and insulting God with foul language. One of the priests then poured holy water on Robbie, causing his eyes to turn red and his face to look demonic. The furniture in his room began to move, his voice changed, and he shouted in pain. He spoke in strange, ancient languages, and then he fainted. After that day, the priests started doing many exorcisms, but Robbie's condition didn't get any better. He screamed in pain as his body twisted, and strange symbols appeared on his skin. There was an X mark on his chest, which was a sign of something very evil. The bed even began to float in the air, so the exorcism had to stop. The family members were really scared. The priests explained that the X mark in Latin means 10, which means there are not just one, but 10 demon spirits on him. The following day, when priests arrived to begin an exorcism, they discovered that Rubus was not in his bed. As they turned around, they saw Robbie on the wall, his head nearly touching the ceiling, laughing loudly and screaming in Latin with a terrifying, painful voice. The priests immediately started the exorcism. Robbie then collapsed, fell, and fainted. The priests tied him to the bed. During the exorcism, his body became stiff, and he shouted in pain. Suddenly, a dark substance flowed from his mouth, and he passed out. The following day, Robbie woke up feeling weak, but appeared to be back to his usual self. He had no recollection of the terrifying events that had occurred, but those who saw it would never forget. Robbie began living a healthy life, and nothing like that happened again. If you enjoyed this story, join the Horror of Reality family for more spine-tingling tales. Subscribe to our channel for weekly horror stories based on real events.